Okay, so the meeting has started. Thank you everyone that has already joined. I think we will wait a couple of minutes just for the last people to trickle in, and then we'll be able to start with the session.
So I think we'll wait another minute and then we'll get going because I know people's time is precious. Okay, I think we'll get going, and it's my pleasure today to introduce Professor Shinichi Nakagawa. Shinichi has one of these very rare Canada Excellence Research Chairs in Open Science and Synthesis in Ecology and Evolution at the University of Alberta. Shinichi will be leading the session today on meta-science in ecology, drawing on lessons from three organizations, I guess the Australian Reproducibility Network, AIMOS and SORTEE, for exploring how these initiatives are advancing reproducibility and transparency in the field. So the session today will run for 1 hour, and we'll have 15 minutes or so towards the end for Q&A. So over to you, Shinichi, and looking forward to the presentation.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you very much for coming. And first half of the talk will be the meta-science in ecology and evolution, and I want to share later on the lessons I have learned or some stories from these three societies, which I was very lucky to be involved early on. So I will start, and also, I think I want to finish with some discussion points. Okay. So first I start from acknowledgement, and so I have moved about 2 years ago from Australia, Sydney. That's the group from Sydney. There's a couple of people still left, and I'd like to thank the current members at we call it our group COSY. That sounds quite nice. And I'm thanking my funders. Okay. So part one is I'm kind of changing a little bit, meta-science and ecology and evolution, or I want to ask this question to my field, replication crisis, and whether we have it in ecology and evolution. And maybe I'll start the talk with something many of you are familiar, but stay with me and I get to the ecology evolution bit. So the first time ever I have heard, I heard the term reproducibility replication crisis was this article in 2012, then Begley and Ellis. Actually, Begley is the Australian person, and I've met him a couple of times. And this was quite shocking because if anything, I would thought the cancer landmark studies would replicate, but 90% of them, like they couldn't replicate it. So that was a quite shocking news we had. Then just after that, this paper came out, and this is very famous. I mean, not just that after that, actually a few years later, I guess. And this was, many of you know, 100 psychological sciences sort of key studies. They replicated global collaborative efforts. And as you see, I think the replicated stuff on the y-axis and original on the x. And what you can see is some of them are on this one-to-one line, but most of them, I think 2/3 of them are this red dots, and many of them didn't replicate, or it's actually the effect size is much smaller, and sometimes I guess the direction of the effects in the opposite side, which I get to that a little bit later. It's called the sign error and a magnitude error. Okay, and just after that, Nature did a very interesting survey, and they asked like nearly 1,600 scientists about, is there a reproducibility crisis? And interestingly, 52 said, yes, we are in a significant crisis, and 38 says like, yes, slight crisis. I mean, it's kind of understand what is the slight crisis would be, but crisis is crisis, and it should be pretty big. But what it told us is 90% of scientists felt we are in crisis. And I think this included the people from our field in ecology and evolution and environmental sciences. So I'm kind of asking this question, do we have a replication crisis in ecology and evolution? What's the difficulty? Actually, this following 2015 replication study in psychology, there's been many replication attempts. Some other fields of social sciences. I think there's economics and also even computer sciences. And usually like replication's quite poor, around 50%. Some of them, I think some field it was like nearly 70%, but it's not like far away from 100%. And why replication? We haven't had those large replication effort in ecology and evolution, and I find it hard it would be happening anytime soon. The reason is we deal with, so most of social science deal with one species, human being, but we do deal with like, any species, which could be up to 10 million species. So it is difficult. My colleagues studied Seychelles warblers in Seychelles. It will be pretty hard to replicate that study. And interestingly, so going back to 2015, I very fortunately were able to co-organize this workshop at the Center for Open Science that's in Virginia, Charlottesville. It's a very nice place. And there we were able to invite about 30 editor-in-chief of the very good ecology and evolution journals, and all their representative, and joined by here, this is the face of the, Brian Nosek is the face of open science, and also you might have heard EJ Wagon Makers. We are joined by those social scientists, and it was a really interesting workshop to make ecologists and evolutionary biologists and environmental scientists aware we might be in a sort of like, replication crisis. Interestingly, most of them, so I get to talk to those 89 chiefs, and most of them said like, oh, this is a problem of psychology. Yes, well, the humanities or social sciences, it's probably very little to do with us. And I mean, like, I think now if I ask the same question after a decade later, the answer would be different. So today I want to show the lines of evidence. We haven't done the large replication efforts in our field, but I want to show the lines of evidence that we probably are in the replication crisis in our field. Okay, so first line of evidence comes from this surveys led by the Hannah Fraser. I was fortunate enough to be involved, and it was really interesting survey. And it's it's a while ago now, but and I would love to repeat this again actually after 10 years later. So you are probably aware of this question of research practice, and that kind of survey is done in psychology and any other many other fields now, but question of research practices include selective reporting, p-hacking, hypothesizing after results are known, hacking. In this audience, all these are very, very familiar. And also like up to fraud. Hope this is very rare. Surprisingly, 64% of the nearly 800 ecologists and evolutionary biologists said we have engaged in one of those question of research practices. And what was surprising, so of course this was an anonymous survey, but the 3%, so I don't know, 20 something people acknowledged in this survey that they made up data. So I mean, if you think about it, these are probably very honest scientists. So this, I used to think fraud is very, very rare, but I mean, 3% is quite large, and the true estimate could be up to 10%. So like, there's something wrong with the system and incentive, which we've been discussing through this, the series. Okay, second line of evidence comes from quantifying research waste in ecology. And yeah, this was a group from Antica Klina from Croatia. And it's kind of, they looked at nearly 10,000 studies in ecology and evolution. It's actually, they looked at the reviews, like this is review of reviews. And not surprisingly, nearly half of studies are not published. So that's kind of don't get into the system. So waste, nearly 70% of studies which are published are poorly designed, and out of 45, out of that gets through, it was like under-reporting, selective reporting. They estimated anything from 82% to 90%. And this 90% estimate is strikingly similar to the other estimate. It's very famous. It's done by Paul Grazio and one more person, I can't quite remember, but the Paul will appear a bit later because he's Australian. And that was 90% in medicine. So it's, that's two very different fields coming to the very similar, waste percentage, how do I say, estimate. This kind of shows this is not a problem one field, it's a probably structural problem in our science. And so, like, those were other people. I mean, I guess first one I was involved, but I'd like to talk about today the study we have conducted as our group. And the question is, what is the publication bias? I think publication bias, I think is one of the most difficult issue we need to deal with in meta science, and I really don't have an answer for this. But there's some things we can improve. And we ask this question: what is the publication bias impacts on the effect size? Effect size and power, that's statistical power, you are familiar with it, and type M and type S error in ecology and evolution. Let me explain what's type M and type S error. Some of you might not be too familiar with this. Type M error and type S error, they're kind of related a little bit. And if you have if you see that, you're reading a paper, if you they report it's a statistically significant. Given statistical significance and the effect size they are reporting, how much magnitude they are making error. So it's a magnitude error, it's a type M error. And type S error is a bit easier. That's like, what's the probability of their making the directional error, which I kind of mentioned a bit earlier. So that's what we wanted to know. And the problem of think about the statistical power, difficulty of I think the estimating statistical power is that we really need to know the effect size of phenomenon, and it's a bit difficult to estimate. And the best surrogate is actually meta-analysis. Yes, meta-analysis gives the effect size of that particular topic. So yeah, use an overall mean from meta-analysis of the true effect size surrogate. And that means we really need meta-analysis to get these overall effect size. And I was very lucky enough just a few years ago, it was led by my former PhD student, Rose O'Day. Through this project, I collaborated with David and Matt Page, the Prisma leaders, and we were luckily, very fortunately, were able to propose this Prisma ecology and evolution. But through this paper, we actually examined 100 meta-analyses in ecology and evolution. So we had 100 meta-analyses which we can use for surrogate. So from that, we can get the effect size and we can estimate power, type M error, type S error. So that's good. So far, so good, I hope. Hopefully, I'm not going too fast, but it's good if I finish early. We have plenty more time for discussion. So our question is publication bias impacts on all these parameters. And we had out of 187 meta-analyses are usable. So SMDs, this is Cohen's D, like a standard mean. Some meta-analysis use standard mean difference. Some of them, maybe this is unfamiliar for the medical people. This is a log response ratio. Sometimes it's called ratio means, log of ratio means. Zeta is a Fisher transformation of correlation. So we had these different meta-analysis using a slightly different effect sizes. And but from those, those papers, we can get those overall estimate effect size, also sampling errors, sample sizes, and also publication years. So what was the impact of publication biases on these statistical parameters of interest? So results are here, separated by different effect size types, but as you can see, everything is kind of going down. So impact of publication bias on effect size was 23% reduction in overall effect sizes and meta-analysis. And this is like really concerning because usually meta-analysis being seen as like, overall estimates. Some of the topics, this is the last word because people after meta-analysis published, some of the research kind of gets terminated because the last word. However, what we found is 33 out of 50 meta-analysis. So we had 84 out of 84, 50 of them had a significant, reporting a significant effect size overall, but 33 of them, once we accounted publication bias, changed significant to non-significant. And it kind of, you have to wonder how much we really know about our field. And you're kind of wondering like, oh, why didn't the original meta-analysis or the authors didn't correct for the publication bias? And it's very rare. Only maybe medicine is much, much better, but in ecology and evolution, even now, only 50% of them, no, decade ago it was 50. Now 70% of them actually do some form of publication bias check in meta-analysis, but it's only 10% attempt to correct for publication bias. I mean, it is a little bit difficult, and statistically you have to make assumption on that. But I mean, regardless, this results actually surprised us. Okay, so you can do this like how, the publication impacted the original meta-analysis. But another question you can ask for this kind of, meta-scientific project is, because all those 84 meta-analysis is based on hundreds of the primary studies. So we can look into what was the average power and that kind of stuff for each, like a typical ecological and evolutionary biology or environmental paper. So this is the answer is here. What happened to power, magnitude error, and sign error for an average study in our field. So before correcting for publication bias, power was 23. This is like quite shocking. Eh? Like recommended power is 80%. This power is, what is power's definition? Power is if there is an effect, what's the probability of getting actually detecting that effect. After publication bias correction, it's like, drops to like, it's quite, it feels like slightly hopeless a percentage. Type M error, so if you see the significant result in a typical ecological papers, you kind of think like, oh, it's probably like effects inflated by 3 times, but after correction, it's 4.4 times. In a similar type S error is like a really huge error because it's an error of sign, and it is 5% maybe, but I mean, like after correction, it's nearly getting close to 10%. And this is based on like 5,000 studies and 1,800 effect sizes. And this was led by Yahong Yang, Chinese postdoc at Sydney. He's now go back to China, and he kind of done this work, and he was also surprised. But he kind of told me, like, Shinichi, maybe this power type M and type S error is a bit hard for the practitioners to understand. So he had a really cool idea, and I want to tell you about it. It's like, maybe rather than calculating power type S, type M error, it is better to calculate what we need for the, sample, what sample size do we need given the effect size of the field. Yes, this is more intuitive, and this is still being reviewed, but this is not the error. This is based on 68,000 meta-analysis. Such data sets is available. You can find it online. Most of meta-analysis do come from medicine, and this actually result would shock you. So to achieve, so this 4 different fields, to achieve 80% of power, quite often you require the really enormous sample size. Medicine, it is like 1,500. Actually, environment sciences, we do lots of experiments, so it's actually not too bad, 124, but most of studies, like we have a 20 sample size, and economics a little bit hopeless. You need 3,000, and I mean, psychology is a little bit better. You need around 500. But this is to achieve 800, not 800% power, 80% power. To achieve zero exaggeration, you need like really, we're talking about 3,000. I don't know how many medical studies have a 3,000. Like we certainly don't have 300 effects, I mean, sample size for the typical ecological environmental studies. And I mean, 1,000 and 8,000, quite hopeless for the economics. So that's really interesting. This probably will get people the attention, I hope. And I mean, what we're suggesting in this paper is we really have to change the way we do science. We can't be just doing this siloed single lab effort. We really do need to collaborate each other to, increase the power. And, many of you are here to kind of try to do this kind of science. Anyway, so naturally we were kind of thinking about, how can we reduce publication bias? And these answers are not new to you, but I'm going to repeat this anyways. And publish everything. People kind of think it's crazy, but it is more difficult than what you think, because as David pointed out, our time is precious. And, we try to publish everything, including negative results, but it is difficult, and motivation of students and people involved like pretty low compared to like exciting, significant results. But in relation to that, many students do have to write a thesis. So I'm kind of encouraging. So we have established this for ecology and evolution, Ecology Archive, this preprint server, and we are kind of requesting all the students to like archive their thesis chapter to preprint server so that the knowledge remains and it's open to the community. Another one, registered reports. You already know this. Like a few years ago, I mean, it's actually now, I think finally ecologists and evolutionary biologists know what's the difference between pre-registration or registration. Yeah, this is very, very confusing. I think David has a paper on it. So registration is same as pre-registration, but registered reports are quite interesting because you get the actual review when you write up the intro and method. And at stage 1, they will say like, oh, we're going to take this if you do what you planned, you told us to do. And the review at stage 2, if you do what you did, regardless of results, it gets published. We have done this several times, and it's, I don't know, I would like to hear other people's experiences. It's not as easy as it looks here, because stage 1, nobody knows how to, in our field, nobody knows how to review the stage 1. One of the reviews said that like, oh, it's missing the results and the discussion. This is the whole point of stage 1, this peer review. And stage 2, it takes a while, so they might not be able to get initial reviewers, and the stage 2 review. Of course, nobody knows what registered reports works. So they're asking us to please change the intro because all that kind of stuff. So our experience has been not smooth, but it's highly recommended. This is very, very, how do I say? Many of you have already probably done it. It's a very rewarding process and an interesting process, especially getting comments at the stage 1 stage, because you can still improve our method, and all those sort of AIMOS hypotheses can be adjusted at this stage still. Okay, so and yeah, last piece is connecting to the next part of the talk. Join the credibility revolution is that I was very fortunate again. We talk about co-founded SORTEE. And this is like, this is a very success story, which I will tell you in a few slides away. And it's really good. It's a full of young people, and they really, I think, this society is making a huge impact. Before I'm leaving this, so I hope, I hope you probably don't need being convinced, but I hope those 30 editor-in-chiefs 10 years ago I met, now they are like kind of feeling like, oh, they were wrong. Like, we do indeed are in a crisis, and they probably trying to do something is my hope. But I mean, being that aside, those many people, those 30 editor-in-chiefs came. Actually, many people are involved in the next movement. And this is something our field should be very, very proud of, is that actually data archiving happened overnight, and it happened a long time ago. So 2010, some of the key journals editor-in-chief got together, and they decided you cannot publish in our field without providing data sets. And that is an amazing movement. Everybody was really shocked at that, when it happened, because, we didn't have a culture, we spent 5 years in the field, collect this precious data. Why would we like to share? But that's how it happened, and it's like, the powerful editors got together, and I think that was the right movement. Now it's, part of the system. It's like we will be kidding ourselves if we are not providing our data set and showing it. Now we are moving to not only providing data sets, but also providing the analytical code and trying to make everything transparent. So, and this 2010 movement are based on some fraudulent case, but interestingly, because of this 2010 archiving movement, there was about 3 big cases of fraud, unfortunately, in ecology and evolution, but I think most of them are caught because they had to make data open, and data had irregularity. So that was, I mean, this is something I was very proud of as an ecologist and evolutionary biologist. Many things we are behind medicine and social sciences. So let's go to the second part of my talk. What I learned from being a part of AIMOS and AusRN and SORTEE, so Australian Reproducibility Network. Okay, so AIMOS, people think the AIMOS is Australian, but it's not. It's Association for Interdisciplinary Meta Research and Open Science. Here is the original founding president, Fiona Fiedler, Australian. She's a philosopher and very much involved in lots of ecological environmental researches, actually. Yeah, so her sort of like area of philosophy, like a philosophy of science she's applying is in the area of ecological and environmental sciences, which is very lucky for us. And the current president, Jason Chen, and he's a law scientist, and it's been like really privileged to get to know. Of course, Fiona and Jason was interesting because this, reproducibility crisis, like, oh, we were told like, oh, cancer biology, you can't really trust it. And someone like David tells me like medicine, like evidence is like, so. And I would thought medicine, if anywhere medicine would be very trustworthy. And last, and maybe not, and the last place I thought was law. Yes, because I mean, lot at stake. And Jason tells me it's like, no, it's the same. But the AIMOS, I want to tell you about the AIMOS. AIMOS is really, it's an international society, but its members are mainly Australian, New Zealanders, and the people around, some surrounding Asian countries. It is, sorry, it's a typo there, but it's very interdisciplinary. And I love this aspect of AIMOS. And, I would have worked with someone like, Jason and was very lucky to be able to work on some open science and law research. So and I learned a lot from him and from the project we did. It's very good that they have annual in-person conferences. And this is very lively and it's very interesting conferences to go to because the interdisciplinarity, of course, it is many people from medicine and psychology, but there's a lot from ecology and evolution and some other areas. And one thing I wanted to point out was established 2019 early. So they didn't crash with first conference they were able to do in person. And actually 2020, Jason, myself and others co-organized in Sydney, but that had to be online. But after that, they were able to do the in-person conferences, and this one is a great one to go to. And I want to tell you a little bit more about. Yes, even though it is international interdisciplinary society, membership is not as large as I thought. Currently, about 100 members, but it's very active. And for example, they have a YouTube channel, and they have like this monthly nice meta science talks, like we do. And reproducibility is like, I think it was started from the UK Reproducibility Network, which I will talk about in the next slide. So they have a journal club organized as well. And I think they actually got some philanthropy donation, and they were able to establish the new, I don't know whether it's a journal or not, but it's a publication platform, Meta Research Open Review. This is in partnership with Research on Research Institute from UK. So they have a really nice things going, and I very much enjoyed being part of AIMOS. Next one is the AusRN, Australian Reproducibility Network. Since 2020, this was we started in the middle of COVID. And the 5 initial members, so there's a Paul Grazio. So he was the one who who did this research waste estimate of 90% in medicine. Alex Falcom, psychologist from University of Sydney, Ginny Barber from UQ, University of Queensland, and Fiona Fiedler again. And that's been really interesting. We would meet monthly online, and we really wanted to model the UK reproducibility network. And many of you know their biggest achievement, they managed to convince the vice president or vice chancellor of research of many universities. They got sort of a champion of open science, maybe half-time position for many, many universities, and they created those local hubs. And we really wanted to do this, but right, I mean, timing is everything, isn't it? So we did write to what is DVC? Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research. In Canadian equivalent is the Vice President of Research. We were requesting, can we do something similar to what UKRN did, but that timing was very bad because financial constraint and all that COVID caused. So we were not very successful. We had some success writing to grant agencies how to spread open science and meta science in the across university, and taking that into account and grant guidelines. So that was that. I think it was kind of interesting that we've been struggling. It just could not, it's still very small, and now it became a part of AusRN actually. Not AusRN, AusRN is part of AIMOS now. We just couldn't really crack couldn't create this local hubs. And one time we actually invited Max Munafo, he's a funding person, and also Malcolm McLeod. Just we wanted to hear, do you have any tips? And I still remember that Marcus telling me, it took them 5 years to actually starting to get some funding and all this. So, idea is perseverance is very important. It's you can't just get together and start doing things, and maybe after 6 months, things start working. It's not many times, not often, as you all probably are aware, that's not how it works. But timing is right, everything works very quickly. But for AusRN, it's been very difficult. But nonetheless, working with this, it's very interdisciplinary. Ginny is actually today, Kelly's probably away. She's in a train, I was told. She actually co-chaired the DORA with Kelly. So that was very interesting experience. So SORTEE, this is so Fiona again, Fiona Fiedler, and Tim Parker is a founding president. With 20 other people, we co-founded Society for Open, Reliable, Transparent Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. And actually, this is 2022 as well. But actually, it didn't quite matter for the SORTEE. We actually, our model was Society for Improvement of Psychological Science, SIPS. And SIPS do in-person meeting, but we have actually stick with SORTEE has stuck with the 24 hours annual online conference. And it's really, really interesting because it kind of starts from Europe or US or something, and it goes around the world. And you can't if you're not, if you're crazy, you can do 24 hours, but most of people would just come into their work time. And that's really the, how they say, innovation they made. And it's very lively. And we modeled SIPS conference model. There's not many talks, actually. We might invite some those, how do I say, plenary speakers. Most of programs consist of pre-registration, hackathon, workshops, and conference. And conference is just a discussion group, yeah. So for example, for hackathon, I co-organize spreading pre-registration. So we wrote, 20 of us together, writing to the editor-in-chief of 100 ecological evolutionary journals and see how many people would actually, no, it's not pre-registration, sorry, it's a registered reports. And actually we wrote 100 journals, but only, I think 3 adopted, but it's a success, no? And the EcoWeb archive, which I will talk, I have mentioned, and we wanted to actually, this was a hackathon again, and actually there's about 60 to 70 people joined, and we actually looked into first 1,000 preprints which been uploaded to EcoWeb archive, and that was very interesting experience. And through hackathon and workshop, I think SORTEE managed to publish some really interesting meta-scientific papers involving many, many co-authors and participants. So that's very good, cool. And these are photos of current and the past, current, and future presidents. And some of the familiar faces in here. In the center, Dom Roche. He may or may not be here today. But SORTEE, 500 plus members globally, 50 plus countries. That's a huge success, yeah. And 11 committees, board of directors, yeah, 70 plus active volunteers. It is amazing. I've been a part of the advocacy committee last 3-4 years, monthly meeting, lots of ideas. They're writing lots of guidelines, interesting projects. I very much enjoy. And it's very energizing to surrounded by young people too. So that's their strengths and the potential weaknesses as well. So 80% early career researcher, only it's not the 20 senior research, 20% senior researchers, and I'm one of them, I guess. And so that was, I think that's their strengths and weaknesses. Like there's a lots of sort of people. So there's sort of lacks connection and funding and all that, but that's being, resolved. It's an amazing group of people. And I wanted to mention the EcoWeb archive. So, the AIMOS had a partnership with Research on Research Institute. EcoWeb archive is a part of SORTEE. And we do have a very good relationship with IUCN. What is IUCN? International Union for Conservation of Nature, which makes red list. And they were looking for somewhere they can upload species reports. And we proudly do. This is very special, how do I say, preprint server. We not only accept English publication, but we accept Spanish, French, and Portuguese. And if I try, I should be trying to put some Japanese as well in the future. Okay, so that's, okay, time is actually going quite, this is probably the last slide. So there's some points I want to tell you and open up for discussion is so it's a kind of people, and all those things I learned is, you have seen Fiona Fiedler for 3 different groups, and Fiona was always the center of the creating this kind of institute, and that's kind of amazing. So it's people, we do have a good people here in a Canadian Reproducibility Network, David, Kelly, and people came to listen to me today. And right time, right place, right strategy. So I said AusRN timing was bad, but at the same time, SORTEE started same time, but they had the right strategy. And the perseverance, I still remember what Marcus Nafo told me, 5 years he and his colleagues has had to write to the government funding agency. So we shouldn't give up very easily. So Canadian Reproducibility Network has the interdisciplinarity of AIMOS, experience for AusRN, I think. It now needs a more early career research. We do have early career research, but I want to have more like SORTEE. And the last thing is Canadian Reproducibility Network may want to more regular events like this. The conference is coming as well, and some infrastructure. So SORTEE has the EcoWeb archive. The AIMOS has a meta. Kind of nice to have something like that. But thank you very much for your attention, and that's from me.
Thank you so much, Shinichi. That was a great talk, and you covered lots of territory, so much appreciated. I would like to invite people online to ask any questions or comments to Shinichi. Just please indicate who you are and where you're coming from. So does anybody want to, Dom, please go ahead.
It's good to see you, Dom. Yeah. I wasn't quite sure you were here. Yeah.
I'm always lurking in the background there. I would miss one of these for anything. It's always time, so I was eating while I listened to these fantastic talks. Thanks for those insights, Shinichi. And so you mentioned I've been involved with SORTEE for a while, and I think this is a great way for us to reflect on like how these different societies and grassroots initiatives become successful, because it is a challenge. Like you said, you have to be patient, you have to be perseverant, you have to be creative. And one of the things I did for SORTEE for a number of years was to sit on the fundraising committee. We've always been operating on a shoestring budget, but it's been, we've been successful at raising funds, mostly through sponsorships, a little bit through membership fees, but we've really tried not to have that as a big source of income, because we don't want membership fees to be a barrier for people participating. So CARN right now is free for people to participate. I don't know if Kelly has any plans to introduce membership fees, but one of the things that came to mind and that we discussed for a while was that senior researchers are often invited to give presentations or talks or seminars in different institutes, and they're given some sort of per diem or honorarium for their work. And often what we realize is that many of them don't actually take it because it's just too much of an issue to fill out the paperwork and get approval from the institution and whatnot to take that honorarium. So we tried actually to convince senior researchers to give that honorarium to SORTEE as a way for us to raise money. We haven't been all that successful, but I'm thinking maybe David have other ideas here, or networks of people that we can contact to, not necessarily for SORTEE, I'm thinking, but more for CARN. Like, we could use obviously more money to do things. And if that could be a way to raise funds, and you might have other ideas as well. Just curious to have your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dom, and thank you for all the work. And you have done a lot of work on this data archiving and all that, which I wanted to talk about, but I didn't talk about. And also, it's you're bringing a lot of money with your colleagues to the SORTEE, but it's been always kind of struggle. And do I have any that's honorarium stuff is a very interesting idea. Do I have ideas to bring more money? It's at the moment I can't quite think of it. That would be good for the Canadian Reproducibility Network too. I wonder David has some idea for the bringing more money or not.
I think the best way to try to get some money might be through some philanthropy. In Canada, there is some possibility to do that. I just think it's very difficult to go through the tri-agency at the moment. But we could obviously discuss that at more length. But I think philanthropy is probably the way to go initially. And I think I like Dom's idea. I don't think, though, Dom, maybe I'm just reflecting my experience, but it's not often that we get a per diem for giving a talk. It does happen, but not for most of them in the Canadian ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
it's true that in Canada it's not that common. I feel like it is more common in other places. I think talking to philanthropies is good. I don't want to hog the time, but just to let you know, we are, there's always talk in the tri-agencies to support CARN, at least at NSERC and SSHRC. I need to touch base with Kelly also to see how we move this proposal forward, because one was submitted, we need to rework it. But I think Kelly could confirm that CIHR has actually set some money aside and will be giving some money to CARN. So that's the first step. It's not huge amounts, but it's a starter.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. I'm going to, because I'm conscious of the time, Jason, I see your hand is up, so please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Shinichi and everyone. I'm Jason Pether from the Okanagan campus of UBC. Thanks again for a great talk. I just wanted to touch on your sort of the idea of encouraging graduate students to deposit theses on EcoEvo archive. And I think that's a fantastic idea, but we discovered recently in one of the projects we were doing was the remarkably few universities in Canada have an archiving facility that's discoverable for theses. We were really surprised to discover there's only a handful that make their theses discoverable, but themselves, you can get access to a lot of them through the Public Library of Archives of Canada, but it's rather circuitous. And so we just found it really surprising that UBC is one that actually has a really good system that has an API and everything. You can discover things, but it just seems strange that we don't facilitate discoverability of all of that hard work that our graduate students do, a large proportion of which may never get published, obviously. So I just wanted to raise that and get your thoughts on if you've discovered similar things or what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah. So this is very, very interesting, and it certainly is a case. It seems like a case for here at the University of Alberta as well. And yeah, when I was saying the deposit some thesis chapter in EcoEvo archive, I was definitely thinking about some universities, or actually almost all universities now do deposit institutional archiving, and whether that, however, as you pointed out, whether they are discoverable, probably not. We do lots of synthesis work. And we certainly do, check the thesis, but it's the most famous one is a base. I think it's a base. What's in Bielefeld universities in Germany? They kind of coordinate. So I think maybe we should really get all the Canadian universities together and join the base effort. That would be really, because more and more, I'm actually now when we do synthesis, we are including great literature thesis as well as a different language like Spanish, Portuguese, and French, and Japanese, Chinese. I'm amazed at how many actually studies we can find in these, and of course. Some people have done these thesis results are often very contrasting to the published one. So it's very important we have access to the thesis. So this is maybe something we can kind of do something together as a, Canadian Reproducibility Network or past, that is a very excellent point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. And Dom, any additional questions that people would like to ask Shinichi? Amber, yes. Did you want me to read that, or do you want to come online and speak?
Hi, everyone. I'll just briefly say yes. The research is everywhere, but not in the hands of the people that need it for this purpose. So I just wanted to mention, and I think this group has the connection to CORE, but the International Repository Directory now is available, and there's a lot of Canadian repositories listed in there as well for data repositories. So not theses, publication repositories, but for data, there is the re3data.org with a lot of effort going into registering Canadian repos, including institutional repos there. Yeah, just wanted to mention that. Thanks.
Oh, wow. So that's
Thank
good.
you.
Yes, certainly will check it out. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that we only, UBC only recently provided instructions to graduate students on how they can deposit data associated with their theses to make it discoverable. And we discovered across the U15 that very few universities have any sort of tailored instructions around that as well. So I think there's just a lot of sort of these low-hanging fruit things that we could address across Canadian institutions for sure.
Yes, I think especially if there's DOIs coming, that they could add them to their CVs, and that would help them as well in terms of
Absolutely.
their career.
Yeah.
Okay, I see most. I think LS is saying most Canadian data repositories are searchable and further, if I'm enunciating that correctly. But I think we probably could do better in sort of making people aware of where these, in a sense, repositories are, because I suspect that many Canadians are not. In the interest of time, I think what I'm going to do on my clock is at 12:56. I'll probably stop now and give people an opportunity to. Amber is saying Lunaris.ca's discovery service of Federer. Okay, so there's the experts here who can help us. Super. Shinichi, I just want to thank you so much for the time and expertise in sharing such a considerable experience and knowledge base with us, and wishing everybody a great day, and thank you all for coming, and we'll see people next time. So take care and thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.